Hello and welcome to The World Today, everyone. I'm Richard Nta in Nairobi. Let's get started with the very latest from the Middle East. U.S. President Donald Trump has threatened to destroy Iran's energy plants and oil wells if Tehran does not open the strategic Strait of Hormuz. Trump's comments come after Tehran called Washington's peace proposal unrealistic and fired waves of missiles at Israel. Ehsan Kiavani reports from Yazd in central Iran.
Israeli and U.S. airstrikes continue against different targets across Iran. On Sunday, airstrike hit the power grid in Tehran, leaving some parts of the capital without electricity for a few hours. Multiple explosions were heard in different parts of Tehran throughout Monday. Up in the northwestern city of Tabriz, strikes targeted a petrochemical plant and also the passenger airport. In response, the Islamic Revolution's Guard Corps, the IRGC, says it has increased its retaliatory strikes against Israel and Arab countries in the Persian Gulf. Today, they announced missile attacks on command and control centers, drone facilities, and sites used by U.S. and Israeli personnel in the region. On Sunday, photos surfaced showing an expensive U.S. aircraft and AWACS completely destroyed by Iranian drones at Prince Sultan Air Base near the Saudi capital, Riyadh. Regarding the possible negotiations between Tehran and Washington, Iran does not trust the U.S., and that is why it is seeking a strong guarantee that even if there are any negotiations and possibly a deal, the U.S. would not attack Iran again. But beyond the trust, that's what Iranians describe as maximalist demands by Washington.
The U.S. demands have been very excessive, unrealistic, and illogical. The meetings that Pakistan has with neighboring countries are a framework they themselves have established. We have not participated in this framework.
From what we see here in Iran, among messages and comments by top IRGC commanders and the leadership, it seems that Iran is heavily counting on the Strait of Hormuz as a powerful leverage. At the same time, the IRGC is satisfied that the Houthis in Yemen have joined the war because they could create another leverage for Iran, and that is their efforts to make the Bab el-Mandeb Strait and the Red Sea as insecure as possible. Tehran seems to be sure that a combination of these can persuade the U.S. to stop the war, which is viewed as a great success by the Islamic Republic. Ehsan Kiavani, CGTN, Yazd.
Israel says it is investigating separate incidents that killed 3 UN peacekeepers in southern Lebanon. Israeli airstrikes on Monday in southern Lebanon and Beirut suburbs killed 7 people and wounded several others. Hezbollah rockets struck an oil refinery in the northern Israeli city of Haifa. Jonathan Regev reports from Tel Aviv.
Regarding that incident in the city of Haifa in the morning hours, power plant hit from a shrapnel from one of the missiles. Firefighters were quite quick to announce that there were no danger of hazardous material, and also the Ministry of Environment saying that the flow of fuel was not bothered. But if Iran wanted to have an image of what they would claim is an eye for an eye, you, the Israelis, are hitting our energy facilities, we will hit yours, then Iran clearly got it. This place is hit already for the second time in this war, and as it seems, Iran and Hezbollah acted in coordination here. The Iranians firing missiles towards that area, and just as they were about to hit, 6 or 7 minutes later, Hezbollah also firing, and the missiles coming at the same time. And this, of course, to create a challenge to the defensive systems, hoping that a missile or a shrapnel will eventually make its way and hit the plant, which eventually happened. The war now not only impacting Israel and Lebanon, also the UN peacekeepers, UNIFIL, the peacekeeper command is saying that at least 2 of their forces were killed in an explosion in southern Lebanon. UNIFIL not pointing a finger at anybody, not blaming Israel or Hezbollah, but stating that at least 2 of their personnel were killed in an explosion in Lebanon. And we're already hearing that the UN Security Council will convene on Tuesday to discuss the issue of UNIFIL on the request of France. And this shows that the impact is now far bigger than just Israel and Lebanon. And this happens as Israel is widening its buffer zone in Lebanon. And at the same time, Hezbollah firing today missiles that arrived as far as the city of Netanya, which is about 15-20 miles north of Tel Aviv. This showing that Hezbollah has the ability, even when it fires from deep inside Lebanon, to fire towards central Israel. Even after all the intense Israeli strikes in Lebanon, Hezbollah is still able to fire towards central Israel.
Reuters reports that thousands of U.S. Army paratroopers from the 82nd Airborne Division are arriving in the Middle East. Another maritime unit is also on the way to the region. They will join the thousands of U.S. sailors, Marines, and Special Operations Forces already there. President Donald Trump is sending mixed signals, both threatening further strikes against Iran and hailing diplomatic progress. Nick Harper reports from Washington.
The idea of oil, the idea of the U.S. taking Karg Island has very much come to the fore over the course of the last day or so. Donald Trump has mentioned it on several occasions, in person, in interviews, and also on social media. At one point, he said that he wanted to take the oil. It said it was his favorite thing to try and do. And as you mentioned, that is a key export or oil hub for Iranian oil leaving the country. However, Donald Trump also said that some stupid people back home are warning him against the possibility of a ground invasion and the possibility of seizing that oil. Lots of things that could go wrong. There are fears that it could claim American lives if there are boots on the ground. There are fears it could raise oil prices even higher. But also Iran is warning that it would punish its regional partners forever. So the possibility of more retaliatory strikes. And while all of that takes place, Donald Trump has also been speaking about the discussions that are ongoing. This is what he had to say about the latest in the rounds of talks with Iran.
We've had very good negotiations today with Iran, getting a lot of the things that they should have given us a long time ago. We'll see how it works out, but they're very good. Moving along very nicely. It was a big day, and we are negotiating with them directly and indirectly.
Obviously, bear in mind, that's a very different story to what the Iranians are saying. They are saying that indirect talks, direct talks, those have not yet taken place. But there is the possibility of a meeting in Pakistan later this week. But still, the US president is putting out those mixed messages, talking about escalation, but also talking about diplomacy. And in a social media post, first thing Monday morning here, he said that the United States, even though it was in serious discussions, was looking to escalate the conflict, saying that if the Strait of Hormuz was not reopened immediately, and if a deal was not reached shortly, the US would be targeting electric generating plants, oil wells, and mentioning once again Karg Island. So the potential there for escalation still very much at the forefront.
The White House says President Donald Trump is interested in calling on Arab countries to help pay for the cost of the war against Iran.
Back during the Persian Gulf War, 1990, 1991, Arab countries paid for the vast majority of the cost of the war. Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, the UAE. Who's paying for the cost of this war? Will those Arab countries step up to do just that?
Well, I think it's something the president would be quite interested in calling them to do. I won't get ahead of him on that, but certainly it's an idea that I know that he has and something that I think you'll hear more from him on.
The White House press secretary also said talks with Iran were continuing and progressing well, and claimed Tehran had privately agreed to some of Washington's points. The leaders of Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and Jordan met in Jeddah to discuss regional tensions and ways to avoid further escalation of the war. The talks focused on coordinating a regional response, backing diplomatic efforts to ease tensions, and managing the economic fallout caused by disruptions to the energy market and trade routes across the region. Tensions over Iran's nuclear program are escalating after reported U.S. and Israeli strikes on multiple nuclear-related sites, including heavy water facilities and a nuclear power plant. Reports also suggest Washington is rehearsing operations to seize Iran's enriched uranium stockpile. Meanwhile, Iran has proposed a ban on attacking peaceful nuclear facilities ahead of a non-proliferation meeting. China says it firmly opposes the use of force and calls for solving the issue with diplomacy.
Armed attacks on peaceful nuclear facilities under the safeguards of the International Atomic Energy Agency violate the purposes and principles of the United Nations Charter, international law, and the statute of the IAEA. Such actions seriously undermine the authority of the Treaty on the Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons, weaken efforts to uphold the international nuclear non-proliferation regime, and could have grave consequences for regional peace, security, and stability. China firmly opposes this and advocates resolving the Iran nuclear issue through political and diplomatic means, calling on all parties to remain calm and exercise restraint to avoid further escalation.
Spain says it has closed its airspace to U.S. warplanes taking part in attacks on Iran. Defense Minister Margarita Robles says the U.S. and Israeli strikes on Iran are illegal and unjust. Ross Cullen reports from Paris.
Pedro Sanchez, the Spanish Prime Minister, has been opposing this war from the very start, calling for diplomacy and not allowing American planes to use joint Spanish-American bases in the south of Spain if those planes are destined to bomb Iran. Now we have a statement from the Spanish Defense Minister, Margarita Robles.
I think everyone knows what the Spanish position is. It is a very clear position. From the very first moment, it was made very clear to the American military and forces, and therefore the bases are not authorized. And of course, the use of Spanish airspace for actions related to the war in Iran is also not authorized.
So, Spain is a NATO ally of the United States, but politically, the direction of the leftist government of Pedro Sanchez has certainly been against the US-Israeli bombing campaign.
Well, that is it for this edition of The World Today. I'll be back shortly with more news from the continent in Africa Live. Thanks for watching.
Holding guns. Word protesters.
Were you worried about your life at that particular time? Not at all.
Excellency, thank you very much for your time. What is your assessment of the state of the continent today?
Africa has the potential to power itself.
Excuse me.
South Sudan authorities begin probe after 70 people were killed in an attack near the capital. A new report by MSF says Sudan's paramilitary forces and their allies are using sexual violence as a weapon of war in Darfur. The World Food Program says 45 million more people could face acute hunger by mid-year due to the Middle East conflict. Hello and welcome to Africa Live. As always, great to have you with us. I'm Richard Nta, live in Nairobi, and for those of you joining us from across the continent and around the globe, we thank you for joining us. Let's take a look at other stories making headlines this hour. Coming up in business, Botswana's GDP shrinks by 5.4% as mining revenues dwindle. And in sports, Ghana's head coach Otto Addo is sacked just over 2 months before the World Cup begins. Once again, a very warm welcome to Africa Live. We begin in South Sudan, where police say gunmen have killed over 70 people following a gold mining dispute. The attack on the mine in central Equatoria State took place over the weekend. Video footage shared online showed dozens of bodies lying on the ground. A local journalist said many other victims are believed to have fled to the bushes. South Sudan's main opposition faction, the SPLM-IO, is blaming the attack on government forces. Police say authorities have yet to establish the identity of the attackers. Patrick Oyet has more from Juba.
The latest information is that the vice president, who also comes from Central Equatoria State, and the man who is in charge of economic cluster, has come out to talk about these very killings. He has, of course, said that the number is big, more than 70, and he said that there is a possibility that there are other people also who died in the bushes, who bodies could be found later. That means the number of 72, 74, 76 could still really go very, very high. And about the victims, these are purely civilians, and this gold mine area is really very near to the capital. And many of the people who used to work for government, many of the civil servants who used to work for government, because of non-payment of salaries, some of them would go to the gold mine, do some artisan mining for 2-3 days, get some $100 or $200, run back to take care of their families. So these are purely civilians who are actually doing artisan mining, who have been killed. They are totally not connected to any armed group. And the government now is saying it will carry out full investigation to find out exactly who are these people who kill people. Up to now, it is not really clear who carried out this attack. The government is saying it will carry out investigation to find out what exactly happened. But many people here are worried because the pattern seems to be similar to what has been happening in other parts of the country. For example, in Abiomnom, where more than 200 people were killed, and the government said it would carry out investigation. There is nothing yet that has come from the government. Now this is happening very close to Juba. More than 70 people have been killed, and the government says we are going to carry out investigation. But people are having very, very little hope. They do not know now who to turn to because things are happening. Nobody knows who are these people who are carrying out these killings at a time when the economy is doing very, very bad. These are people who are really just trying to survive, get something small to take care of the family, because the government is unable to pay salaries going to 2 years. So it is really something that many people are worried about. If things can happen and there are no answers, everybody is saying we need to investigate. The army is saying they are still investigating. The police is saying the same thing. The government, the executive, the government is saying the same thing. And very little later comes on, because we have seen patterns where the government says they're investigating, but the results of the investigations are never brought public. So people are worried about the situation. The vice president has said they are evacuating those who are injured to bring them to medical facilities, and we have actually ourselves even seen some people who have been brought to hospitals who are injured, some shot in the arm, in the leg. They are receiving treatment. The vice president has also said they have sent in troops to take care of the place as investigations begin. That we believe is also happening, and many people now want to know what exactly happened. And you know, when more than 70 people are killed at once in one place, so many families are really affected by this. Some are brothers and sisters, members from the same family who have been killed in this incident. So people are really very sad about the incident.
Well, South Sudan is witnessing a severe surge in violence this year, particularly in the northern regions and near the capital, Juba. Earlier this month, local authorities reported that 180 people were killed in Abyahom County. More than 4,000 people were displaced following the attack that has been blamed on different groups. In February, at least 16 people were killed by what the state information minister described as unruly elements from the South Sudan People's Defense Forces soldiers in the eastern state of Jonglei. Jonglei is also where fighting has intensified most dramatically between the government forces and opposition elements. Just a few weeks ago, the army issued an evacuation order in Akobo to clear the way for military operations. The United Nations warns that the breakdown of the 2018 peace deal between the President Salva Kiir and suspended Vice President Riek Machar is a primary driver of escalating instability. And to Nigeria now, where at least 30 people were killed in Central Plateau State on Sunday night when gunmen attacked a university community. The assault took place in the Gare Yahweh community of Angwan Rakuba, a district long affected by violence. CGTN's Sharon Baranga reports.
The latest attack in Plateau State has spread fear among residents of the Gare Yahweh community in the Angwan Rakuba district. Residents say the attackers opened fire indiscriminately.
People were here in the evening, and unfortunately, wicked terrorists came and attacked our people. And then we have counted scores of people who are now dead. And then so many others are also in the hospital receiving treatment.
In response, the state government imposed a 48-hour curfew in the district. And the University of Jos, located nearby, suspended exams scheduled to start Monday.
Before this to happen, we have somebody on the social media that threatened that after the Salah, they are going to attack Angwan Rakuba. They are going to attack, they have mentioned several areas, Angwan Rakuba inclusive. And then it has happened. And we are calling on government to check the social media and arrest whosoever speak on this attack.
The latest violence comes amid a wider pattern of deadly clashes in central Nigeria between herders and farmers. Experts point to climate change and competition over land as underlying causes. But the motives of these attackers remain unclear, and authorities are investigating the incident. Sharon Baranga, CGTN.
Medical charity Doctors Without Borders says sexual violence is being used as a weapon of war in Sudan's Darfur region as fighting between the army and the rapid support forces continues. In a new report, the group says almost 3,400 survivors sought treatment in its facilities in 2024 and 2025. The vast majority of them women and girls. The findings point to what it calls a deliberate and systematic pattern of abuse, with survivors frequently identifying the RSF fighters as responsible. The conflict, soon to be entering its fourth year, has displaced millions and left civilians increasingly vulnerable. Many attacks have occurred in everyday settings, including markets, farms, and displacement camps. Doctors Without Borders warns the crisis is deepening, describing the violence as a defining feature of the war and a serious violation of international humanitarian law. The Central African Republic President Faustin-Archange Touadera has been sworn for a third term 3 months after a disputed general election. The 68-year-old was declared the winner with almost 78% of the vote. The opposition coalition boycotted the election, citing a 2023 constitutional referendum. Not only did it remove presidential term limits, but also increased the term from 5 to 7 years. The changes reset the clock on Touadera's previous terms, permitting him to run for a third term in 2025. The CAR has been marred by conflict since 2013, where former President Francois Bozize was ousted. The conflict was de-escalated by a 2019 peace deal between the government and 14 armed groups.
To ensure the well-being of the Central African people, to conscientiously fulfill the duties of my office without any consideration of ethnic, regional, or religious affiliation, never to exercise the powers vested in me by the Constitution for personal gain.
Time now for a short break. We shall reset and return with more Africa Live. Here's what's ahead. Coming up, the World Food Program says 45 million more people could face acute hunger in the next 3 months due to the Middle East conflict. Welcome back to Africa Live. Thanks for staying with us. The UN World Food Program says the number of people facing acute hunger in the world could reach unprecedented levels this year. The warning comes as the conflict in the Middle East continues to destabilize the global economy. A new analysis by the WFP shows nearly 45 million more people could face acute food insecurity by the middle of the year if the U.S.-Israeli war on Iran continues and oil prices remain high. Wilkerson Yabor brings us the very latest.
The Russia-Ukraine conflict, which broke out in 2022, is reported to have set off a far-reaching cost of living crisis, with global hunger affecting nearly 350 million people. The latest projections from the World Food Program indicate that a similar situation could unfold if the conflict in the Middle East continues. The World Food Program estimates that in addition to the 318 million people already food insecure worldwide, nearly 45 million more people could face acute food insecurity. According to this analysis, vulnerable families in many parts of the world could soon find themselves unable to obtain sustenance because energy disruptions and food markets are closely linked. The unfolding situation in the Strait of Hormuz is reportedly already driving up the costs of energy, fuel and fertilizers, exacerbating hunger concerns beyond the Middle East. Countries in sub-Saharan Africa and Asia have been deemed the most vulnerable due to a reliance on food and fuel imports. WFP projections indicate an increase of 21% in food insecure people for Western Central Africa and 17% for East and Southern Africa. Sudan, for example, imports about 80% of its wheat, while Somalia, which is experiencing severe drought, has seen the price of some necessities increase since the start of the conflict. Analysts now warn that if the Middle East conflict is not contained in the short term, food insecurity could be catastrophic in the long term for some of the world's most vulnerable countries and populations. Wilkerson Nta, CGTN.
A growing number of Moroccans are calling for a return to a permanent standard time, which they describe as being based on natural time. This comes as a petition to scrap the current GMT +1 system gathered more than 100,000 signatures. The debate has resurfaced following the end of Ramadan, when the country temporarily switches to GMT, reviving long-standing concerns over what many describe as negative impacts on daily routines.
Morocco has adopted the GMT +1 year-round time zone since 2018, except during the Ramadan period. But critics say the system disrupts daily life, arguing a return to Greenwich Mean Time would better align with people's biological rhythms. A PwC survey shows 77% of Moroccans believe time changes affect their sleep.
We have observed a very strong response from citizens who increasingly believe that the current time system no longer serves them at all. While a return to the natural and legal time, Greenwich Mean Time would help restore balance on social, psychological and health levels, in addition to its positive impact on professional and family life.
For many, the issue goes beyond inconvenience, touching on both physical and mental health. Students and workers say the extra hour makes mornings harder, especially during winter months when daylight comes later.
We are feeling both mental and physical strain. The extra hour is causing fatigue, especially in the morning, and making the day feel shorter.
Honestly, this extra hour has really exhausted us. It's taking a toll on our bodies and our health.
Others point to broader disruptions in everyday life. from prayer schedules to school routines, particularly outside major cities.
The extra hour disrupts daily life. It shifts prayer times and forces students to go to school very early, often in the dark, particularly in the rural and mountainous areas.
Authorities have long defended GMT+1, citing energy savings and alignment with European partners, but some argue the priority should be stability in time management rather than regular clock changes.
I believe summertime should remain summertime quite simply. We should stop constantly changing the clock.
With the petition now eligible for government review, the debate over Morocco's time system is once again gaining momentum, and as public pressure grows, authorities face a tough balancing act between maintaining economic alignment and safeguarding the daily realities of citizens. Adnan Shawishi, CGTN.
Time now for our business segment. Here are the headlines. Coming up in business, Botswana's GDP shrinks by 5.4% as mining revenues dwindle. And an Iranian parliamentary commission approves plans to impose tolls on the Strait of Hormuz.
You don't find the stories of North Africa by sitting on the sidelines. You got to get out, go there, and you'll find them. In the bazaars of Casablanca, among the crowds in Cairo.
We'll come to visit Cairo, the ancient capital of Egypt.
Along the waters of the Nile, along the sands of the Sahara. No one else will take you where we can in North Africa. No one else will show you what it's all about. CGTN, see the difference.
Welcome into the world of money. In Botswana, data from the country's statistics agency shows that the real GDP shrank by 5.4% year-on-year terms in the fourth quarter of last year. This drop is attributed to mainly weakness in the mining sector. According to the data, Botswana's mining and quarrying industry recorded a 47% decrease in value added during the last 3 months of 2025. Other sectors that contracted in the period include construction, water, and electricity. Botswana's economy is reeling from a prolonged downturn in the global diamond market, driven by economic uncertainty and the rising popularity of lab-grown stones. Before the diamond market slump, it had been viewed as an African economic success story, partly because of its low public debt. Elsewhere, the African Export-Import Bank says it has raised $2 billion via a 3-year dual tranche syndicated loan. According to a Frexim Bank, the capital is its largest ever such transaction. In a statement, the Cairo-based lender said it will use the funding to refinance existing facilities and general expenditures. The bank added that it initially aimed to raise $1.5 billion, but lifted the total due to strong investor demand. A total of 31 lenders from Europe, the Middle East, Asia, and Africa participated in the deal. In East Africa, Tanzania is experiencing a boom in high-speed internet connectivity as the country continues to improve its digital infrastructure. Fiber connectivity is rapidly becoming the backbone of corporate offices, fintech platforms, and the country's fast-growing digital services sector. The nation of nearly 70 million people has steady growth in internet penetration, which is now at over 80%, according to the communications regulator. CGTN's Isaac Lucando looks at the data.
Internet cables such as these are becoming an increasingly common sight across many streets in major Tanzanian cities. According to Tanzania's telecoms regulator, as of December last year, fiber to the home connections had grown to 139,000, a 157% increase over the past 2 years. For many industry players, changing times are offering significant room for growth.
We didn't have the tablets, we didn't have all that. But right now, people are using smart homes, smart fridges. So with that kind of growth, there's no way that this industry is going to saturate at any time, not anytime soon.
The government claims the growing demand for fiber internet is down to a conducive business environment that has also brought some price stability.
The average cost of data outside bundle packages has remained at less than half of 1 cent per megabyte. Furthermore, this trend indicates a continued increase in access to communication and information technology services in areas that were previously underserved. This progress has also enabled citizens to access various digital, social and economic services such as healthcare and financial services more easily and quickly.
According to Tanzania's telecoms regulator, fiber to the office subscriptions have also seen significant growth, rising by up to 217% over the past 2 years, as demand for faster, more reliable internet increases. This, it says, reflects steady growth in overall internet penetration, with subscriptions reaching 58.6 million in the last quarter of 2025, largely driven by broadband services. The relatively low cost of subscriptions, around $19, along with the promise of faster upload and download speeds, is attracting a growing number of Tanzanians to fiber internet. Authorities believe that increased fiber penetration is key to expanding digital entrepreneurship, online learning, and even remote work. Despite this progress, industry players say hard-to-reach areas are slowing down expansion efforts.
The infrastructure and the capital that is involved in getting to those is a little bit different from going into an area that is just straightforward. So, yeah, there are challenges that we come across, and in the market, there are times where we have to put our heads together as players to be able to serve an area.
The government says it plans to connect all wards in the country with fiber optic cables by the end of this year. That will be challenging in a country the size of Tanzania, but is a key target for the goal of a digitally driven economy. Isaac Lukando, CGTN, Dar es Salaam.
Electronic payments are seeing rapid growth in Malawi, driven by a move towards easier and more convenient forms of payment. Since many people in the country are still excluded from formal financial services, they have resorted to using mobile money systems instead. As a result, supermarket shops, informal markets, and even taxis are now accepting mobile payments. CGTN's Travis Andrews has the details.
E-payment is a rapidly growing industry in Malawi, as more and more people choose to use mobile money as a form of payment to conduct their transactions. Malawi's national switch, or NatSwitch concept, has simplified this and is an interoperable backbone for banks and non-bank providers. With a population of over 22 million, most Malawians have moved to e-payment using mobile money as a way of seamlessly transacting within the economy.
The absorption of e-payment in Malawi has been tremendous, and there has been an increase in the absorption and the usage, because when you look at the numbers by the Reserve Bank of Malawi, it shows that from 2015 and up to 2025, there's been an exponential growth. For example, there were only 2 million Malawians who were using e-payments or they were using e-wallets. That number surged to 13 million by 2023, thereabout. But when you look up until 2025, by March 2025, the number grew to 17.6 million Malawians. In fact, between March to June 2025, this number grew from 17.6 million to around 20.1 million.
With the move to a more digitized economy, there is broad adoption of e-payments, both in the formal and informal sectors. The agricultural sector has also adopted e-payment for its cotton and tea industries. This is supported by the Reserve Bank of Malawi, which has mandated that all licensed businesses offer at least one electronic payment, boosting adoption. Vendors, taxis and retail businesses all accept e-payment, as it allows for quicker transactions to take place without the need for cash deposits by businesses at banks.
The moment people buy the batteries here, there are several modes of payment they use. One of the payments they use is mobile transactions. People here, they are allowed, customers, they are allowed to pay using their mobile phones. I'm happy with the mobile transaction because I'm not wasting my time going to deposit at the bank.
For now, through the government's Malawi digitization project, it is improving connectivity and integrating electronic payments into government services for social cash transfer programs, which is expected to improve transparency. Ravs Andrews, CGTN.
Shifting focus now to the developments in the Middle East. Iranian state media reports that the country's parliament has approved plans to impose tolls and restrictions on ships transiting through the Strait of Hormuz. The proposals outlines establishing a toll system based on Iranian currency and reinforcing what officials describe as Iran's sovereign authority over the strait. Hormuz is one of the world's most vital maritime choke points. About 20% of global seaborne liquefied natural gas trade passes through it, mostly from Qatar, the world's second largest LNG exporter after the U.S. But Qatar has halted production amid the Israeli-U.S. conflict with Iran. With energy shortages driving a surge in LNG demand across Europe and Asia, the U.S. is expected to play a more pivotal role in global LNG trade. Israeli and U.S. attacks on Iran are not just disrupting oil and gas. The production and delivery of fertilizers has also been disrupted, and that's a threat to India's agricultural sector. The country is the world's second largest fertilizer consumer. If the war continues in the Middle East, farmers in India will feel the effects as inputs rise sharply during the coming sowing season, and that's assuming the fertilizers will get to the market. CGTN's Ravinder Bawa reports.
As farmer Deshpal Dahiya gets ready to tend his crops in the field, he is worried. The fear of a shortage of fertilizers in the upcoming summer season threatens not just the yield but also his livelihood. The Iran, US and Israel war has disrupted the supply of fertilizers, raising import costs for buyers like India.
I want to request the government to make alternative arrangements, as a shortage of fertilizer will lead to food shortages. If we don't have enough nutrients for the soil, the yield will be affected. Less production will lead to a food security crisis in the country.
India's food security is heavily dependent upon fertilizer supplies from West Asia, making it vulnerable to disruptions in the region. With no end in the sight to the escalating conflict, the fertilizer crisis is deepening.
There will be a major shortage of DAP, an important ingredient during rice sowing. Urea will also be in short supply as the amount we manufacture requires a large amount of gas. With the gas supply affected, urea production will be low.
We have already been facing a shortage of fertilizers. We don't get them when we want. The government has already put a cap on the supply. If the conflict continues, then the farmers will face problems and the rates might go up.
According to the officials, India currently has sufficient fertilizer reserves. In a few weeks, the summer sowing season will begin, raising demand for fertilizers. The government has a short window to find solutions if the war drags on.
This is the time that government of India has to look for solutions. So this is really that moment that when you need to basically set up a high-level committee and sit down and figure out what are you going to do if you don't have enough urea.
Farmers like Dahiya are watching the war closely, knowing their future depends on a smooth supply of fertilizers. They expect a timely government intervention to safeguard livelihoods and agricultural stability. Ravinder Bawa, CGTN, Delhi.
China's top trade promotion body says global trade frictions remain elevated throughout 2025, signaling rising tensions in the global economy. According to China's Council for the Promotion of International Trade, all monthly readings of the index stayed at high levels last year. Trade frictions involving the United States intensified, with its average index rising by 16 points year on year. Since April 2025, U.S. reciprocal tariff measures have significantly driven up global trade tensions, weighing on economic stability worldwide. However, in January 2026, the total value of trade friction measures declined slightly, down 7.3% year-on-year and 4% month-on-month. Meanwhile, data from the Council shows China's foreign trade is off to a solid start this year, maintaining steady and improving momentum.
In February 2026, CCPIT issued a total of 744,500 certificates, including certificates of origin, ATA carnets, and other commercial documents, marking a year-on-year increase of 72.38%. This strong growth indicates a robust start for China's foreign trade this year. The sharp rise in certification data reflects not only the continued impact of pro-trade policies, but also the effectiveness of market diversification and the strong momentum of new business models.
Our sports segment is up next. Here are the headlines. Coming up in sports, Ghana's head coach Nta Addo is sacked just over 2 months before the World Cup begins. Welcome into Sport on Africa Live with me, Richard Nta. We begin with football, and Ghana's roller coaster ride on the international stage continues. Their head coach Nta Addo has been sacked just 72 days before the World Cup kicks off in North America and comes following a run of 4 straight defeats. The 50-year-old had led the Black Stars at the 2022 World Cup on an interim basis, a disappointing tournament there where they were eliminated in the first round. He was brought back in 2024 after Ghana sensationally missed out on qualification for the 2025 AFCON tournament. Yet, since they qualified for the World Cup in October, the West African side have lost to Japan and South Korea, and in this window, Germany and Austria. Friday's game in Vienna was a 5-1 thrashing. It was just too much for the Ghana FA, who said they'd announce a replacement in due course. Ghana will be joined at the World Cup by 8 more African countries and possibly 9. It's a huge night for the Democratic Republic of the Congo, who face Jamaica in a one-off qualifier in Guadalajara tonight.